doing some goat forestry down here. This area was originally, well, this is pretty standard looking for this region, except that most of the Twizzlers and really twisty or looped over, arched over dead stuff I've cut out. So it's thinner than average for a high grade. High grade meaning that, like, look right here. See that Twizzly tree? See this little spindly one? You can't sell either one of them, but you can sell that. So you take just that one. And then these fill in the space. And then you get really just a replacement stand of shade tolerant trees that are... A shade tolerant tree is your maple, gum, sourwood. They're willing to bend and flex. They can live in the shade, basically. An oak or a hickory, they can't live in shade. They'll self-prune and die. Poplar really doesn't do well in shade. But when you have a shade-tolerant species, they're willing to drift around for light, so you get very little straight wood out of them. And basically, when you see prime sawlog hardwoods, that comes from a field that was left to regenerate because everything came up even-aged. It all raced. The fastest trees became the dominant because they got to the canopy and they shaded out their competitors. And the slow trees, they don't keep up. Genetically slower, inferior trees, they don't keep up, so they get shaded out and they eventually die. And those are what you should be cutting out for firewood. You should be growing your prime and harvesting your culls. So a high grade is the opposite. It's where you harvest your prime early and then you leave the culls all standing. There's nothing wrong with harvesting prime timber. There's something wrong with leaving trash in its place because it's a placeholder. Any tree is a placeholder. Doesn't matter how good or bad it is. It could be the twistiest forked sprout, like a clump sprout. It could be rotted, hollow, but it's still sucking up the light. It's still preventing a better tree from growing in its place. Here's a prime example. There's a stump there, and there's one a little bit further up right there. But this spot right here, there's a stump right there. I cut that maybe 4 years ago, and now there's two nice poplars. Already 30 foot high. 25, 30. There's two nice poplars there, and they're not stump sprouts. Those are seed trees. Here's a third one right there that's probably not going to keep up because it's getting shaded. But that poplar right there is pretty young. There's a few along that fence row. So how you get a forest full of straight trees is to cut out all your twisty ones. But you don't want to do it too fast. If you've only got, if you've got an acre patch that you're working on, and there's only a handful of straight trees, and you remove all of the twisty ones, all of the rubbish trees, all at once, you're giving too much light to your prime stuff, and it's going to bush out. For the most part, it's going to reach for light. I'll show you an example up here. So in this area, what you're going to see is mostly straight stems and a lot more sky than what was here when I got here. These 3 or 4 oaks that are close to me, they're small. They're like 8-inch, 10-inch at chest high, and that's all they're ever going to be because they're the remainders. They're the remainders from diameter limit cut practices. So for years, let's say every 10 years, someone comes in. This was originally a commercial timber property. And obviously the logger only makes money in big wood. He does not make money harvesting small little pecker poles. So, this goat bugging me. Get out of here. Go. So, the logger is going to harvest the stuff that makes him the most money. Unless some forester's standing there screaming at him, which no one's going to work for somebody like that. No one's going to keep working for a forester that causes them to not make money. And you don't make money in pecker poles. You don't make money in pulpwood. Sometimes you have to deal with it. It's something you have to be able to manage. Say you get a clear cut, there's going to be pulp. You have to be able to manage it. You have to have markets for it. But that's not your bread and butter. Prime timber is your bread and butter. So if you go in to do a thinning or a select cut or a diameter limit cut, that means everything sellable at a profit gets cut. So let's say that your break even is a 13-inch tie log or better. That's what you're harvesting. Everything that's not a 13-inch or not tie grade or better, you're going to leave it there. So these just weren't that big. You come in 20 years later, a fast tree might have grown 3-inch diameter. Now it's in your diameter limit to cut off again. But a slow tree will not be there. The same one that you passed over at 8-inch, now it's an 8.5-inch 10 years later. So it stays and stays and stays. And by continuous harvesting of your fastest genetics, what you do is almost permanently, not in God's terms permanent, but in man's terms, at least for the rest of your life, what you've done is slowed the growth rate of the entire forest. Because now all of the trees that are standing are slow growers, you know, a 32nd of an inch per year, if you count the ring thickness, where, you know, 30 of them will fit on a fingernail. And if I cut these, that's what they'll be. You'll look at this tree and you'll think, oh, that tree's only maybe 30 years old. I bet it's 90. If I cut them down all the time, I'll bet it's 90. And the only reason these are still here is because I didn't want to thin too quickly. I wanted the regeneration to have to fight upwards to get its sunshine. So these trees were left here to maintain sufficient shade. And also because a tree stores better on the stump, and these were some really straight white oaks, probably the straightest white oak little poles that I have, and I wanted them for, I think they'll be porch poles someday. And if I was to cut them years in advance, then I'd have to store them and keep them dry, and they would degrade, and, you know, I'd have to peel them, all that stuff. So they store well on the stump. They can sit there and grow 1/32 of an inch per year, and it's not hurting anybody. But they will be coming out because they're preventing a fast-growing tree from growing in that place. And the only way that you can know if you've got a fast-growing acorn versus a slow-growing acorn is to let them all race. You put sunlight on a big, broad patch of land, and all at once, stuff starts growing. Well, the slow ones, the ones that are only knee-high when the others are over your head, the knee-high ones, let a goat eat them off. Let a pig eat them. Let something eat those. Graze the little knee-high stuff off. Those ones that made it to 10, 20 feet above the grazer's reach, that's your fast stock. That's your hot rod genetic stuff. Grow it. You see what I'm saying? And then 10 years further, 5 years further, whatever, you come walking in and you say, well, geez, let me take a look here. Oh boy, I got 2 young new poplars. Well, this one's got a crook right there at 12 feet, right in the prime butt log, and it forks. And then that one forks a little higher, so, you know, which one's better? You know, you get to start saying, I think I'll keep this one and I'll cull those other 2 or 3. This goat's following me around all freaking day. Come here. Come on. You want to carry me around? Let's go. Get off of me. So, if you don't have something that comes in and grazes periodically, you're just going to get briars. It's just going to grow up in brush, and the sunshine is never going to hit the bottom, never going to hit the ground to stimulate new seed germination. So really what I feel like the right thing to do is, if it's your own homestead, your own property, you can't, doing this on a customer basis or on a large scale would be a challenge, to say the least. But on an acre or 2 or 5 or 10, you know, on a small homestead basis where one man likes to be outside enjoying nature, this is a great way to spend your afternoons. You know, you just get your electric net, you just move it as needed, and you let them eat off the ground layer. As you can see, this is all the network of stems from thorns that I could not possibly have. I could not walk up to these trees before I turned them out. 3 days, they strip it all off, so I can just walk in and trample my way over, not get covered in ticks and ants and bugs and spiders because they've already picked them up. I can walk in with a hatchet and pick and choose. Cull, keep. Wonderful. That's it, folks. Thanks for watching. Praise the Lord and God bless.